Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Manager. Here we interview a fantasy football manager with a great track record of success. We'll find out their strategies for getting a top finish by looking at their careers so far, as well as how they're doing in the current campaign. My name is Joe and today I'm joined by Tarek Balbaa. Tarek, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Joe. I'm really glad and honored to be joining you today. I've always been a huge fan of Fantasy Football Scout. It had been my only resource when it comes to FPL information throughout the years, except for in addition to the Twitter in the last couple of years, the FPL has been booming on Twitter. So currently, both are my resources when it comes to FPL information.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks so much for that. It's great to hear that, and it's great that you can find some time to join us as well. I do enjoy these Meet the Manager videos because I get to find out some strategies for some success from people like yourselves who've had quite a good career. I say quite a good. Let's have a look at your career, shall we? I'm going to put it up on the screen as well. Okay, it's pretty good. This is your 14th season. And I'm going to just say it's been a sensational career. You've had 8 top 10,000 finishes, including 2 in the top 1,000, and a total of 5 top 5,000 overall ranking finishes. That's a long way. Obviously, it hasn't gone well every season. You've had 3 or 4 where you've struggled to get into the top 100,000. But let's not look at those quite yet. Let's look at the good seasons in more detail. Can you describe some of your strategies for success in some of those good years, those 10,000 and even the 1,000 finishes as well? So let's start off by hits, really, because that's the basics, really. What's your attitude to hits? Do you keep them and save them, or you're quite happy to just spend 4 points and 8 points every week?
I'm not afraid to take any hits. So on average, every year I take around 8 to 12 hits.
Okay.
Sometimes I even do hits to avoid price drops or gain value. Mm-hmm. So, but it's calculated risk. Sometimes I go for it just to have a gut feeling, or it's calculated risk. So I'm fine with hits anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's quite similar to how I am with hits as well. I don't take one every week. But yeah, about 7 or 8, something like that, a year is quite good because you have to do it sometimes.
That's fine.
Do you feel
that's fine.
When you look at your game week team every week, and this links in with hits as well, some weeks do you fear the template, so to speak? Do you fear that players other people have, and you look at your team and you don't have them? And if you do fear that, is that the time to spend hits, or do you kind of go through that fear and just ignore it?
I'm not worried a lot about the template. I just look at my team, and if I really like it, I'm fine. Sometimes I have issues to solve. For example, this year, Jota and Perez, terrible stats. Even I watched the highlights. They failed the eye test as well, dropping in price as well. So I had to move them both, even for a hit. So when it comes to the template, I'm not worried a lot, especially in the beginning of the season. Template doesn't worry me.
No, I mean, looking at formation as well. So looking at hits, attitudes to fear. So you're not too worried and you don't take too many hits. But what about formation as well? So for example, this season, we'll come to your team later, but I noticed you got 4-4-2 at the moment. I've been a big fan of 3-4-3 for many years. Dabbled in others as well. So what about you? What's your kind of favourite formations over the years?
3-4-3 has been my favorite formation throughout 13 seasons so far. This is the first season I've reverted to 4-4-2 after my terrible score last year. I found out that there is real value in the defense, so I opted this year to use 4 defenders: Digne, Arnold, Zinchenko. So these players offer a really good value. And what I found out last year also that the expensive forwards didn't have a great season,
Yeah.
So I thought I will go for cheap forwards this year and try it out. Mark Cousins did it last year, so I'm following his lead this year, and hopefully I will do better.
So it's interesting what you say. So with formation, it's quite logical, really. It depends on the trend, what's going on at the time. If if, for example, there's loads of must-have defenders, well, it makes sense to have 4 at the back, not instead of 3. And if forwards aren't that good, then you don't need like.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started doing this, you'd have 3 premium strikers. I couldn't even imagine such a thought these days. But at the moment, you think two up top looks to be the sort of formation that works for you.
As far as the season has gotten so far, I'm fine with it. But unless Aubameyang or Aguero start scoring hat-tricks every week, so I'll have to rethink it and maybe use a wild card. But for now, I'm fine. Okay. Cheap forwards are doing well so far. Haller from West Ham, Pukki, Barnes. So there is abundance of cheap forwards. So I'll try it for a while and maybe check in game week 8 if I need to revert back to 3-4-3 or not.
And what about looking at the stats that you use as well? Some people are just ignore stats. They just completely look at the eye test, look at who's playing and what they're doing, and some people just only look at stats. But obviously, for most people, it's a happy medium of watching football and looking at stats as well. But for you, what are the key stats you use? And feel free to give any examples where stats have really helped you.
Okay, the eye test plays a major role in my picks. I watch a lot of games here. On average, I watch around 4 to 5 games every week. So that helps a lot with my picks in FPL. When it comes to stats, I focus mainly on number of shots, shots in the box, big chances created. That's my main focus here. I'm also a huge fan of your goal imminent table.
Oh, okay.
I also have to see a lot of picks, yeah.
That's good to hear. I often describe that as the analog version of the expected goal data as well. Lots of people tell me on social media I should use expected goal, expected assist data more, and I indeed have done a little bit recently. What about you and that form of data, or is that still kind of a bit lower down for you from basics of like, are they shooting in the box and watching matches?
Yeah, I prefer to get back to basics. Number of shots on target, shots in the box is just fine for me. So I'm not a huge fan of expected goals. So it really varies, and sometimes it's not showing the reality. So I'm just focused on the basics.
And looking at now, your football shirt at the moment is an Arsenal football shirt. Which
yes.
Is Arsenal the team you support, or is it another team?
Yes, I've been a huge fan of Arsenal since 1998. The big guns, Bergkamp and Henry. But Arsenal have been terrible in the past couple of years. And King Mo Salah joined Liverpool. So most Egyptians nowadays cheer for Liverpool. So that's currently a cheer for Liverpool. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully Arsenal get back to the days.
I was going to ask how it influences your decisions though with players. Are you, if Arsenal start looking quite good, are you a bit more eager to get their players? For example, Aubameyang, if he scores a brace, do you start thinking, oh God, I must have him in?
Okay, it doesn't have any effect on my choices.
Oh, good.
I'll always go for whatever helps me score more points. I'll go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good idea as well. You mentioned you watch 4 to 5 games a week. Now you're based in Egypt. What's the situation with football and how people watch Premier League football in Egypt?
Here in Egypt, all matches are broadcasted live. So in Egyptian, the Premier League has a huge fan base here in Egypt, especially after Mo Salah joined as well. So on average, I watch most games every week.
Do you find yourself now? Obviously, there's friends of yours in Egypt who don't play fantasy Premier League, possibly, and they like to watch a good football match as well. Do you find yourself cheering on Burnley against Watford or whatever match it is? These are the sorts of what I would call an FPL match as well. Do you watch those sorts of matches as well?
Yeah. Unfortunately, FPL made us point slaves. I would cheer whatever will give me points. I would cheer for it. Yeah, whether it's Burnley, Watford, even if they're playing against Liverpool or Arsenal, I'll go for it.
Okay, that's very wise. How do you know when to ditch a player, and how do you know when to
Yeah,
get a player? So I've mentioned so cheekily about Aubameyang's brace, but
yeah.
in terms of ditching a player and getting a player, what's your rationale there?
As I mentioned earlier, I base my judgment on eye test first. So I watched a lot of games. For example, I was intending to buy Martial from Manchester United,
Yeah.
but I watched them against Crystal Palace, and he failed the eye test. Manchester United and he looked badly, so I skipped Martial and went for Mount. Mount had really good stats.
Okay.
Chelsea played better. So the eye test mainly, and as well as the stats. For example, as I mentioned earlier as well, Jota and Perez failed the eye tests. Terrible stats.
Okay.
Had to dump them. Uh, KDB is having a great season so far. I watched him against Tottenham. I had to run and get him right away.
Okay.
Great value at 9.5.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think, I mean, I've done the same with in the past with Eden Hazard. I don't remember. There's been a
yeah,
couple of games. You probably remember these as well. I think there was a game against
yes, yes,
Everton, and the final whistle goes, and you go, right, I'm getting him in because
yes,
he passed the eye test, and KDB this
yeah.
season is that player for you. He's
Great,
just,
great value as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've got him in as well. He's passed my eye test as well. So yeah, we're
yeah,
thinking alike there. We've spoken about your good seasons, but what I'm also interested in is the bad seasons as well. For you, I mean, they're not that bad, in the great scheme of things,
yeah.
but in your standards, they're not where you'd hope to be. So what went wrong in those seasons? But more importantly, what have you learnt from them?
Great. Concentrating with many league rivals and blocking their moves was one reason. It really blocked my mind and make me take wrong turns. So this is a bad thing to do. Last year I did the fatal mistakes as well. I sold Salah before his hat trick versus Bournemouth.
Yes,
Terrible, terrible move. Terrible move. Yeah.
yes,
I triple captain Salah versus Fulham for 1 point instead of waiting for the juicy fixture against Huddersfield.
yeah.
Again, terrible move. I kept faith in the expensive forwards, even though midfield of Salah, Hazard, and Sterling was doing the job. I was a bit stubborn. I also fell in the stupid trap of captaining Duffy in the double game week, captaining
Oh,
Sane instead of
yeah,
Aguero.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Some of us did
game week
that.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the feeling what I've done last year. Those are the sort of things that really hurt me. So this year I'm planning to focus more, not concentrate with competitors, and have a clear mind on what to do. Not get much affected with whatever I read on Twitter or the forums. Just have a clear mind and go with my gut feeling and the stats I test as well.
I think some of those examples you gave now, I've done some of those as well, and not others. But for example, the
Yeah,
Duffy one as well. Now I did that as well.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
it, I think it had merit because of the fixtures and the player and what he's capable of. But on reflection, I don't know whether you feel the same way as well. On reflection, captaining a defender in a double game week when there are attacking options there, or just simply better
Totally
game
agree.
weeks. Is that how you feel? That it's just simply the wrong player and the wrong week to play chips.
Yeah, definitely. I was really amazed after I did this move because I never take risks when it comes to captaincy. I always use big guns, Sterling, Salah, Kane, Aguero. When I'm being Maverick, I might choose a second best choice every week. This is being Maverick for me. I always go with the first choice, most favorite player. I will go with him most of the time.
Okay.
So this was a terrible move going with Duffy, really.
Well, I mean, it's a good segue into this season as well because Mohamed Salah is once again, a key
Yeah.
figure in our decisions, key figure in our teams, key figure in our captaincy decisions. You are certainly keeping an eye, I would imagine, on eye test and stats much more carefully with Mohamed
Yes.
Salah because of what happened against Bournemouth last season. But let's have a look at how you're
Yes.
doing at the moment as well. Now you have Salah, but you also have Sterling, and a lot of people are moving. Are you captaining one of them most weeks at the moment? And what's your rationale between captaining one? Because we're starting to see some arguments on Twitter and social media about whether to go for Salah or Sterling. So, first of all, are they key captains for you? And secondly, how do you decide which one to captain?
Uh, as I mentioned, I always go with the big guns. So when you look at my team, the big guns are really Sterling and Salah.
Yeah.
So I will always go either Salah or Sterling. Unfortunately, like many others, I showed the wrong choice every week since game week 1, 2, 3, 4. So I always chose the wrong guy. So hopefully going forward, I will make the right choice and choose the right choice.
See,
Um, yeah,
I was going to say I have as well. I've made the wrong choice, and one of
many did.
and I think one of the themes of this season is working out how to make the right choice. So okay,
It's really hard, really tough.
So do you look at the opponent as well? It's quite specific about these two players, but say for example, this coming weekend, Sterling is away, but he's against Norwich, and Norwich his defence hasn't looked good. But meanwhile, Salah is at home against Newcastle, and Newcastle, I don't think have looked very good either. So how do you decide?
Currently, I'm leaning towards Sterling. Norwich defense
Okay.
is really terrible, lots of injuries. So I'm leaning towards Sterling. Salah could really do a job, but after Newcastle played a great game against the Spurs, and I'm not sure what will happen between Mane and Salah. Maybe it will affect Liverpool a bit. So most probably I'm going with Sterling this week.
Okay.
Hopefully it's his turn to get some points after Aguero stole all his points last week.
So could that be an example of where your ability in Egypt to be able to watch so many matches has made you decide on Sterling, because you've seen him and you've seen what the state of Norwich's defence. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
You're currently just outside the top million. That's once again not too bad for this stage of the season, which is coming up to game week 5. But probably for you, not where you want to be. What moves do you think you want to take to get further up the rankings?
Okay. It is still early in the season. I'm usually a slow starter. I'm not worried, and it's really important to stay calm, especially after a bad game week. I currently like my team. I'm keeping my wild card for now. I may be also saving this week's transfer, unless any emergency happens or injury. So maybe it will come handy later on. My strategy, I will we'll stay for a couple of games and reassess afterwards. So I'm not worried that I'm around the 1 million so far.
No, I wouldn't be. I mean, looking at your team, I mean, I've essentially wild carded this week to get your team. so I was quite surprised that you were around the 1 million mark, because this is not a 1 million mark team. This is a top 20, 30,000 team as well.
Maybe it's because I bought them after they scored, I bought Pookie after his hat trick.
Yeah.
I bought Mount after he scored, But currently, I think I have a good team.
Okay. Looking at the structure of your team, so we talked a bit about formation as well, but looking at your bench, so you've got Greenwood, Lundstram, and then Donker and Button there. So it's a nice cheap bench really there, but they all get minutes or start in the case of Lundstram as well. Button is back up there to Ryan as well, so he will get minutes if Ryan isn't playing. So all of them are starters in their own way. What's your philosophy by bench in general? I've seen some people with quite happy to have all non-players, but do you like to have some backup options there?
I'm fine as well with my bench so far. I tend to get better bench maybe in December and January. Maybe a lot of rotation by then. So maybe by then I will have a better team value to get a better bench. But currently I'm satisfied with the cheap bench. I like to spend all my money on the 11 starters.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, I actually think this is a good bench. And obviously, you could. It's nice to have like other players, but I think these are good playable players there. Even Greenwood will get some minutes there.
Yes.
Looking at that as well, looking about going forward, we've mentioned some of the trends this season. I'm quite interested in your attitude to kind of football trends and how it affects fantasy managers. You've mentioned about the Sterling and Salah getting the big guns in. They are the two big ones at the moment. Some people would disagree and say perhaps Aguero is a bigger gun than either of them. But what else do you think in terms of trends this season? What have you got your eye on in terms of the way football is changing and how fantasy Premier League managers should adapt?
I really like Aguero. He's always been part of my team throughout the years. But this year, was Jesus playing? Maybe he'll get rotated. Reece got number 9, so maybe he'll play a lot more than last year. I'm currently favoring Salah and Sterling. I also like Aubameyang, but Arsenal are not consistent enough for me. Kane is playing some matches like a midfielder instead of striker.
Yes.
So I'm currently and Kane failing the eye test. I really like Aguero, but I'm afraid of Guardiola's rotation.
Okay.
So far I'm satisfied with Sterling and Salah, and again I will reassess after a couple of game weeks when Champions League starts. Maybe I'll reassess by then.
I think you're right. And the reason I asked that question, say for example in the Sky game, there's the Sky Fantasy Football game. Salah and Sterling are considered forwards in that, so it's quite hard to pick a number of forwards because they're going to take 2 places for most people as well. In Fantasy Premier League we don't have that issue, but it just means that the goal scorers are actually in midfield, so that's why you're going cheaper up top as well. Just before we go, just look at some of the cheaper players this season as well. Who's impressed so far? I mean, Pukki's in your team. Anyone else has impressed so far and you think could make a mockery of their lowly price tag?
I really like Aller from West Ham. Played great in the last couple of games. Maybe if Pukki failed to score in the next couple of games, I will buy him. Abraham also from Chelsea. If he cemented his spot in the Chelsea forward line, he's a great choice as well. But I'm currently trying Barnes. Barnes barely have great matches going forward. So I'll try Barnes and Pukki for a couple of games and reassess by then. I'm also looking for Ceballos from Arsenal. Arsenal have a great green fixtures going forward. But I'm a bit afraid of Emery and rotation.
Yeah.
Europa League is starting soon as well. So I will monitor Ceballos. Maybe going forward, I might drop Wan-Bissaka. I bought him, and I didn't notice that Manchester United had only 1 clean sheet in the last 19 games in the Premier League. So I was really disappointed. So currently he's benched in my team, and I'm playing Pukki instead of him and Lundstram. So maybe I will shift to Wan-Bissaka and get Ceballos instead of Dendoncker.
Yeah, no, I think that's very, very wise. Now, it's always interesting because you always get new players emerging. You remember a while back these young players, Jamie Vardy and Raheem Mahrez as well, coming onto the scene, very cheap and took a lot of people by surprise. So just wondering which players might take surprise this season. And Thabayo at Arsenal, yeah, he's definitely a player I've got
Yeah.
my eye on. Hopefully
Yes.
there. But for now, thanks so much for joining me. Good luck with the game week. Good luck with the rest of your season. And I hope it's one of those great ones again. Thanks for joining me.
Hopefully, and thank you so much, Joe, and have a nice day.